Okay, then let us start. Maybe we will pass to the first slide if possible. Yes. Okay. So good morning at the workshop on the passengers transport. We are very happy to host you today. We know that we are actually hosting many people who probably see us for the first time as European Labour Authority, who participate, at our workshops for the first time. So again, we're very happy to have you on board. We are happy to offer you this interpretation into all of the languages. And what is very important here, since we know that we are having people who may not speak English, when you are using a chat, please try to use it in English. If you are unable to write a question in the chat, then please rather raise a hand, because otherwise, if you keep writing in your language in the chat, the message might not come, immediately to the knowledge of everyone, and then maybe interpreters would have to be asked to actually say it loud. So in this case, it would be better if you actually raise a hand and maybe say it yourself. So when it comes to the agenda that you see on the screen, we will be having 3 sessions. The first one is dedicated to the posting of drivers in the passengers transport, and it will consist of the presentation of the rules by the European Commission, and then exchange of views, including social partners, and a discussion. I encourage you, especially as enforcers at the national level, to really ask questions if you find anything that is still unclear to you. The second session is dedicated to the report on occasional services of carriage of passengers. Here also our colleagues from the European Commission will be presenting the key findings from the study. And then we will have also a possibility to ask questions and discuss the issue presented. The session 3 is about truck and bus weeks co-organized by ELA and Roadpol. And here we will have intervention by our colleague from the enforcement unit from ELA, giving us some, first observations and statistics after the truck and bus weeks that took place this year, and also a representative from Roadpol. Next slide, please. As you know, and you have been informed, this workshop is being recorded, and only the part of the presentations, meaning no part of the discussion, will be published on our channel on YouTube, meaning we are recording a whole workshop, but we will cut out the parts of the discussion. So feel free to raise your hands and appear at the screen. We will delete the part where participants are appearing at the screen. So only the presentations will be then published on our YouTube channel. And you can see already we have some of the previous workshops recorded and also published there. If you go to European Labour Authority channel on YouTube, you can see already, and click on playlist, you can see how many different videos we did publish online with different linguistic versions. So also here, after the workshop, in around 3 weeks time, I think you would be able to find all the linguistic versions under a playlist of workshop for passengers transport. So I invite you to start following us on YouTube, as there will be more videos, not only this one, soon appearing on our channel. And without further ado, I also pass the floor to my colleague Federico Pancaldi and ask for the next slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Bona, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to also my side to this important workshop. And as Ivona said, if you are meeting ELA for the first time, I would like to give you a welcome also to ELA's activities. Just as a brief refresher for those who may not know us yet, the European Labour Authority is a newly established agency, was set up in 2019, and with the objective to assist the cooperation and between the member states and the social partners in the enforcement of labor mobility legislation in the European Union. This includes, of course, the road transport sector, and therefore we are here. Our objective is to assist the European Commission in supporting the member states authorities and the social partners in implementing the legislation that was set through the mobility package 1 in this particular case. We are also responsible for the posting of workers in general, social security coordination, and fight against undeclared work. Now, within the context of road transport, we have structured our activities in 2022 with this framework for action for road transport. In the next slide, you will see this framework for action is composed of 3 main pillars, and these 3 pillars correspond to the main activities that ELA does: information, administrative cooperation, and enforcement. With respect to the enforcement pillar, I will leave then the floor to my colleague in the third session, as you see, just to say that enforcement includes both analysis and risk assessment, the fight against undeclared work, and the support to cross-border concerted or joint inspections. We will talk about it in the third session. What I am focusing here is the information and the cooperation pillar. And in the next slide, I would like to just advertise the fact that one flagship initiative by ELA in the context of this framework for action is the Road to Fair Transport campaign that will be launched very shortly. In the next slide, you see the substance of it. Just get familiarized with the logo and the name, because this is something that you will see on the social media very soon, and your member states and social partners organizations are involved in this campaign. This campaign has the objective to promote information about the new rules on the social rules on the road transport sector. And we are touching upon 4 campaign topics: the posting of drivers, driving arresting times, enforcement activities, and tachograph regulation. For all of these 4 topics, there will be explanatory videos translated into all languages. And we invite you, of course, as soon as you see them, to give it a look and share them as much as possible with your contacts. The campaign, as I said, will be launched shortly, which means on the 12th of October, and will last for around 4 weeks. It is, in the next slide, the campaign is sided by important activities. First of all, we are bringing the campaign also to the member states themselves by organizing some information events, which we call road show. For the moment, 5 member states are involved. The first information session will take place in Romania on the 12th of October. Then we will have also other events in Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and Germany, as you see. There is also material that we are developing on for the campaign. You can find it on our website, which is indicated in the slide. There are information leaflets which are translated into all EU languages, plus some non-EU languages, such as Albanian, Macedonian, Turkish, Russian, and Ukrainian. We are targeting, of course, the drivers and the main nationalities that we can identify. In the next slide, I would like to then pass to a second part of our activities, which are the cooperation activities. ELA has an important objective to support and facilitate administrative cooperation, and what we are doing here today is part of these efforts. The fact to assist the Commission in explaining the rules and the details of the application of these rules. We have done the similar exercises, for instance, on the new modules of the IMI system for road transport on the 9th of December 2021, so before the rules on the posting of drivers kicked in. We have organized an information session on how to use these new modules. You can find all these videos on the YouTube channel that Ivona previously mentioned, and they are translated into most EU languages. So please have a look at them. We are organizing, and we have organized actually other training sessions on the use of posting declaration portal for road transport, and we will organize new further workshops of like this one in order to be sure that we reach out to the widest audience possible amongst the national authorities that are involved in the application of the social legislation on international road transport and the social partners. There is finally a call for good practices with a thematic focus on road transport. These good practices are oriented especially to cooperation between member states in the application of these rules. You can find the relevant information again on our website. Without further ado, I think this is just to give you a context of why you are here, sitting here today, who we are. And ELA is assisting the Commission, as I said, and the Commission, of course, is the one responsible for developing legislation and the interpreting rules. So I would like to give the floor to our colleague Eva Ptaszyńska, who should be connected from the European Commission. Eva?
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, and I give you the floor. Thank you, and have a nice meeting.
All right, I hope you can hear me and see me. I was just kicked out for a moment from the meeting to be invited as panelists. So thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity. I would like just to set the context for what we'll be discussing, which is related to Mobility Package 1. So as you know, the Mobility Package, it's been already 2 years since the adoption of Mobility Package 1, and it started applying gradually with rules on driving and resting times as the first set of rules applicable almost just after the adoption of the Mobility Package 1 in 2020. And then the other parts of Mobility Package, like posting rules, access to market, access to profession, started applying. So now Mobility Package 1, social and market parts, is fully applicable. So, of course, the success of this package lies in a correct implementation. That's why we are here, to ensure, to help you to ensure this correct implementation of all the rules in Mobility Package 1. This, of course, depends on a common understanding of the rules in place by all actors to whom the rules apply, but also to enforcement authorities who have to control compliance with these rules. And further to this, of course, ensuring consistent enforcement and applying the same control practices across the EU. So to help, you've heard already from Federico that ELA is doing a lot to help the member state authorities, but also the sector, to implement mobility package requirements. Commission, together with the Commission, with us in DG Move, we've started doing this assistance work quickly after the adoption of Mobility Package 1. The results are the set of questions and answers, or as you like, guidelines or guidance or instructions, not only to enforcement authorities in member states, but also to operators and to drivers on how to understand, how to apply, how to ensure a full compliance with the rules in place. So we have a set of Q&As, set of guidance notes. We have prepared the training sessions and educational materials and fact sheets together with colleagues in ELA, and workshops. And this is just one of the workshops in the series of workshops which is addressed to member state authorities, but which will be then publicized and among the whole, all actors in the to whom the rules apply, so that everybody has really the same understanding on how to apply, how to comply, and how to control with these rules. So on posting of drivers rules, we've already established two sets of questions and answers. One actually more helping member states to prepare their transposition measures. Unfortunately, the deadline for the deadline for transposition and notifying the transposition was 2nd of February. Unfortunately, we still have some members who are lagging behind, and this is very, very unfortunate because, of course, it affects the implementation of these rules across the EU in a consistent and effective manner. So I set two sets of Q&As, so one dedicated to explaining member states how to correctly transpose the rules, and the second one describing the application of the rules mainly to road transport operators in haulage sector. And now we have a third set of rules which will be talking about application of the posting rules in the passenger transport sector, because obviously it has its inherent specificities, so not everything can be applied to freight transport as passenger transport as to freight transport. So that's why this third set of Q&As are dedicated to passenger transport. Just to mention that these Q&As are established around transport scenarios, just to illustrate the application of the rule. And these scenarios are not just hypothetical scenarios. We have received them as a real life business cases, real scenarios that happen in the business, in the passenger transport business, from our key stakeholders, in particular from IRU. So, so these are not hypothetical situation. It's really based on what happens on the ground. This first set of questions, of course, describes quite basic scenarios. I understand that the reality is more complex than that, but we have to first establish the baseline, and then we can discuss more complicated situations and trying to explain how to apply posting rules to those. Now, my colleague Katarzyna will present to you the general approach on application of the posting rules, and she will present a few scenarios. These are not all scenarios that are now part of the Q&A on posting in passenger transport, which has just been validated yesterday by our cabinet. So you will see she will present just a few scenarios, but the full set of Q&As contains 21 scenarios. So there is a lot for you to study after this workshop. This Q&As is not yet published. We'll start the process of publishing after this workshop. So it should be available on the DigiMove website by the end of this week. Firstly, of course, only in English version, but then it will be translated into our other EU languages. And the second part is bus and coach, a study that we have launched as required by Mobility Package 1 in order to analyze what are the specificities of passenger transport which would possibly require some more adapted rules on driving and resting times. So Kasia will also present the key findings, which of course of the support study, which of course will inform the Commission decision on the way forward. And I will not reveal any more secrets and give the floor to Kasia to talk about the real stuff. Thank you.
I will first present the common rules which apply both to the freight transport and to the passenger transport, and then I will focus on passenger transport, which is the topic of our workshop. Well, as the next slide, please, as already Eva mentioned, the posting rules for drivers and operators in road transport were adopted under mobility package, and these rules are set out by Directive 2020-1055. Which was adopted in July 2020 and applies from 2nd February this year. This directive is often called as Lex Specialis because it sets down specific rule for road drivers with respect to directives 97/71 and 2014/67. The objectives of the Lex Specialis are to ensure adequate working conditions and social protection for drivers on the one hand, and suitable conditions for business and for fair competition for road transport operators on the other hand. And it is very important to always keep in mind that these all objectives are important. Then, according to the Lex Specialis, posted drivers have right to full remuneration in the host country where they are posted. And also the directive sets out harmonized framework for administrative requirement. There is a close list of documents that can be checked at the roadside and the premises or via IMI, Internal Market Information System. This system is a key system for posting rules, together with the new public interface connected to IMI, which we call EU Road Transport Posting Declaration Portal. Next slide, please. What are these administrative requirements? What can be checked by control officers at the roadside? Then, first of all, the operator has to submit a posting declaration, and the directive specifies the closed list of elements that are in the posting declaration. These are, for example, the identity of the operator, the identity of the driver, the envisaged start and ending of the posting, and, for example, the license number of the driver. And then the posting declaration has to be submitted at the latest at the commencement of the posting. And the driver must have a copy of this posting declaration in paper or in electronic form, the evidence of transport operations. For the passenger transport, this would be a journey form for occasional services or authorization for regular services. And also the tachograph records, especially with country symbols. Then these are the documents that controllers may require from the driver, and of course can issue a fine if the posting declaration is not valid. For example, it expired. And what are the documents that can be requested via IMI or via RTPD after the period of posting? Then the competent authorities of the host member state can require directly from the operators via RTPD portal the documents such as payslips, proof of remuneration, employment contract. And then if the operator fails to provide the required documents, then the competent authority within 8 weeks, then the competent authorities of the host member state can require the assistance of the home country to help to provide these documents from the operator. Next slide, please. Okay, what is the model adopted by the Lex Specialis for posting groups? This is the state of establishment which is defined in Regulation 1071 2009, and the distinction between types of transport operations to which rules on posting should apply, and those to which posting rules should not apply. And then the general criterion for some distinction is the degree of connection with the territory of the host member state. And the Lex Specialis already determined the operations which are under posting rules, and those which are exempt from posting rules. These are the operations which are not posting situations are bilateral operations, limited additional non-bilateral activities in the context of bilateral operations, and transit. And posting situations are non-bilateral operations beyond the allowed non-except additional non-bilateral activities and cabotage operations. Next slide, please. Okay, well, I will not discuss this. It was already very well presented by my colleague Eva. And then please, next slide. Well, okay, then now we focus on carriage of passengers and both regular, occasional passenger transport. The Lex Specialis refers to Regulation 1073 2009 for different definitions such as regular services, occasional services, cabotage operations, and also in the next slide you will see specifically for occasional carriage of passengers which are local excursions. These are excursions which are intended for non-resident passengers previously carried by the same carrier on one of the international services, and which are carried out with the same vehicle or another vehicle, but from the same carrier or group of carriers. Next slide, please. Well, as regards regular carriage of passengers, in the guidance, we adopted a STOPS approach to determine whether the operation is bilateral or not. And how is it done? The criterion when the passengers may be, this is the criterion when the passengers may be picked up and or set down at a given stop, and not whether passengers are actually picked up and or set down at that stop. Why this approach? For the reason of predictability and legal certainty, because this is the only way that enable operator to know in advance whether it must submit a posting declaration or not, and also for the driver to know whether he or she will be posted or not. Next slide, please. And now I would like to present the situations which are both exempt from posting rules and non-exempt, and with some selected scenarios. Then the lex specialis defines bilateral operations as situations when the driver picks up passengers in the member state of establishment where the operator is established, and then when he or she sets the passengers down in another member state or a third country. Then when the driver picks up passengers in a host member state and set down in the home country, and also this situation applies only to occasional passenger transport, the situation when the driver picks up and set a passenger in the home country for the purpose carrying out local excursions in another member state. Yes, and then these situations are specified in Article 1, Paragraph 4 of Directive 2020-1055. This is the Directive on posting of drivers. The next slide, please. And then, yes, you can see now some selected scenarios, examples of bilateral exempt operations, which apply both to regular and occasional transport. And on the second, especially on the second situation, you can see when the driver start driving from Belgium, and then he set down passengers in two different countries, and because the lex specialis and there are allows several bilateral operations during one journey. The next slide, please. Well, no, I think that please the previous one. Yes, because these are the examples of bilateral operations which apply only to occasional transport. These as operation, these are so-called closed door tours when the driver start the journey in his member states of establishment and carries out local excursions, and then set down passengers in his member states of establishment. These groups are predetermined. They are the same passengers, and as for previous cases of bilateral operations, this is we can say several bilateral operations within these closed door tours. It is no reason, for example, to not allow the exemption for these tours when the situation is practically the same as for the previous bilateral operations. The next slide, please. Here we have the situations when one only additional non-bilateral activities is allowed, is exempt from posting rules. This is in the situation when the driver, in addition to performing a bilateral transport operation, picks up passengers once or set them down once in a host country that the driver crosses. And contrary to the freight transport, for the passenger transport, there is only 1+1 situation. This means that during the outbound journey and inbound journey, there is only a possibility for one additional non-bilateral activities to be exempt from posting rules. If for the outbound journey there was no no bilateral activity performed anyway, there is no possibility to have two exempt non-bilateral activities, as is this the case for freight transport. Of course, there is an exemption only on the condition that driver does not provide transport services between two locations within the same country. The next slide, please. Okay, the transit, that is a very simple situation. In the case of transit, there are no posting rules. The driver crosses through the territory of one country or multiple countries without picking up or setting down passengers, and transit is not affected by stops, for example, for hygiene reasons, for both drivers and passengers, for refueling or taking breaks. The next slide, please. And then we have here the situation, non-bilateral operation, which is under posting rules. This is the situation when the local excursions are carried out in a host member state without picking up or setting down passengers in the member states of establishment. Here, the driver and the passengers fly to Spain, to another country, and the local excursions are performed in this host country. This is completely different situation. For example, than the situation of when the driver starts from the member states of establishment, because here it's a clear situation when the transport operator is competing with local road operators to offer a local service. Therefore, it is justified that those situations are not exempt from posting rules. And the next, I think that yes, the next slide, yes, is about typical cabotage operations when the passengers are picked and set down within the same member state in the course of a regular international service. I think this situation is clear. It's completely the same as for freight transport. This, I think that it's okay for me for the timing. Thank you very much for your attention. Occasional services of carriage of passengers under regulation 561/2006. The next scenario, please. Some words about the regulation itself. It sets down rules on maximum daily and weekly driving times, minimum breaks, and daily and weekly rest periods. And its objectives are to harmonize the condition of competition between modes of inland transport, especially within the road sector, and to improve working conditions and road safety. This regulation applies almost equally to two distinctly different types of transport services, to transport of goods and transport of passengers. And the appropriateness of one-fit-all rules has been challenged by the sector for many years for the specificities and the needs of this specific sector. And this issue gained political importance in the context of negotiations for the revision of this regulation under Mobility Package 1. There was a willingness, however, to finalize the package. Therefore, the regulation, revised regulation, did not address the particular issue related to passenger transport by bus and coach. However, as a compromise, Article 8, paragraph 10, was introduced, and this article requires the Commission to evaluate and report on whether more appropriate rules for drivers engaged in occasional services of carriage of passengers can be adopted. Next slide, please. Okay, what are these specificities of occasional passenger transport? In fact, it differs in many ways from the freight transport, even from regular passenger transport. It is occasional passenger transport is in large part comprised of services such as tourism, which are highly seasonal. There are peaks of activities during winter or summer seasons, and more quiet periods for this sector. There are mostly short drives interrupted by frequent breaks. Drivers rarely drive 8 consecutive hours, usually sleep in hotels, and seldom drive at night, but in hotels. And there are also more often tailored itineraries, which are highly variable in terms of the length of time and amount of driving. And it is mostly customer approach, and it depends on somehow ad hoc requests by passengers for breaks or rest or some changes in itineraries. Another point, next slide please, is the difference within this occasional passenger transport between international and domestic services. A so-called 12-day rule applies only to international passenger carriage. According to this rule, the driver may postpone the weekly rest period for up to 12 consecutive 24-hour periods. And for example, for a trip of 160 or 100 kilometers between Belgium and Netherlands, this trip is subject to this 12-day rule, but similar journey within Germany only, within one country, may not benefit from this rule. This is a clearly disadvantage of domestic transport operations. This is between this well, in the context of the occasional operations. Then the fourth, next slide, please. We have launched the impact assessment procedure exercise because we have this legal requirement to assess whether specific rules can be adopted for occasional passenger transport. We contracted an external study with external contractor, and also within the impact assessment there were a number of consultation rounds. It was an open public consultation on the inception impact assessment in January-February 2021. We have received 87 feedback from public authorities, industry stakeholders, operators and business associations, trade unions, drivers, self-employed and employed drivers, and also citizens. And the open public consultation was launched between November 21 and February 22, and it gathered 170 replies, and also the contractor carried out targeted interviews with different target groups, more or less the same, who replied to consultations, but really focused on road business associations, bus and coach operators, trade unions, employed drivers, and individual drivers, and public authorities. And there were also case studies carried out by the contractor, which focused on small, medium-sized, and large operators in different member states to understand the business model and the real situation on the market. Next slide, please. And then, yes, and then the impact assessment work could identify the main problem drivers, problems, and the implications. As you can see on this figure, there is a misalignment between the nature of occasional bus and coach services and the rules on the break times and rest periods, and also the difference of treatment between international and domestic bus and coach operations and operators. And then the operators have problems to organize fair, efficient, and high quality services, and also this situation with rules on breaks, rest periods, which really don't fit to the specificities and needs of the occasional passenger transport, also influence the working in driving conditions for drivers. They experience a high level of stress and fatigue because they don't really they can't really satisfy their passengers. Also, then this also result in lower attractiveness of the driving profession and directly road safety. Then both operators and drivers also during consultations indicated that they have problems with compliance with the rules. They are sometimes between, or they satisfy the customers and don't follow the rules, or they follow the rules and the customers, the passengers, are not satisfied for the services provided, and also there is insufficient demand and investment in this occasional passenger sector. Then these are these different problems, implications that we have to solve. And the next slide, please. And what are our objectives really for the new rules that could fit the sector? Then we have general objectives: ensure fair, efficient, and high quality occasional bus and coach services, and also improve working and driving conditions for drivers, including the aspects of stress and fatigue of drivers, and also road safety. These are the objectives which are both valid. And then the specific objectives are to ensure more flexible distribution of breaks and rest periods, including a 12-day rule, and also promote equal treatment between international, domestic, and coach operations, the same competition, and improved competitiveness, performance of operational bus and coach operations, the impact assessment exercise could inform us that especially SMEs, small companies are face more difficult situation, and then they really would benefit more than larger companies from a better for more adequate rules for the occasional transport. And then the next slide, please. Yes, I would like to present very briefly different policy measures which are under considerations. There is no secret about these. These measures were already presented under inception impact assessment for the publication, also open public consultations. They were also asked, presented during targeted interviews. Well, there are maybe some adjustments or compensatory measures that have been added, but in general they have been already known at the beginning of this launch of the launch of this impact assessment exercise. We have grouped them into three types regarding breaks: daily rest and weekly rest. And as regards breaks, the policy measures under considerations are to allow flexible distribution of breaks, then the possibility not only to split breaks into 15 and 30 minutes, but also into 30 and 15 minutes, or into every 15 minutes. Another possibility would be completely flexible distribution of breaks, then the possibility to have mini breaks of 5 minutes. Always to comply with the rule of 45 minutes of break after 4.5 hours of driving. Then the daily rest group would be about postponement of the start of the daily rest period on the condition that the trip lasts more than 8 days and the total daily driving time is less than X hours. There are different possibilities. For example, postponing by 1 hour if the daily time is not more than 5 hours that day, with once or twice possible postponement during a journey, or even postponement by 2 hours, provided that the driver does not drive then 5 hours, and also the possibility or once possible postponement or twice during the same journey. At the next slide, please. Then there is the 12-day rule possibilities under considerations, for example, to really align domestic services with international services under the same conditions, and also removal of the single service condition when using the 12-day rule. For example, a driver could first drive one tour group for 6 days and then another one for a 6-day trip, and still benefit from the condition applicable to the 12-day rule. And another measure under consideration is removal of extra compensatory rest after the 12-day rule. Now the driver needs to have first a regular weekly rest before he starts the trip, and then have a rest, compensation rest. And this measure also looks at removal of this extra compensatory rest after this 12-day rule. Another possible measure would be to distribution of weekly rest over a 10-week reference period for domestic services. This would not be really full alignment with international occasional services, but it would be, however, making easier for domestic operators to deal with peak seasons and to define to organize day trip and also allowing somehow the drivers to spend their weekly rest longer with families. Now we have the situation that sometimes if there are trips more than 6 days, then the driver has to spend his rest time on the road. Flexibility for this offered by 12-day rule and also this 10-week rule would be really to allow drivers to spend more time with the family when they take the longer weekly rest, and also would solve the problem of the shortage of drivers, because in this case the operators would not need to employ the second driver, but also they would also, especially small operators, would also extend the range of their services to more longer trips, because now, well, if there are trips which are not which do not allow the employment of second driver, the small companies really have to really abandon these kind of trips, because they are very costly, and the customers really don't want to pay even for one additional day, because employing the second drivers really increase the price of the trip in a way the customers don't want to accept this situation. Well, I think that well, and also I would like to say that for the moment we have 3 policy measures which under considerations, which group these measures on breaks and rest periods. For the moment, it's too early to really to say which would be the preferred option, because still the assessment is ongoing. But I would like to stress 2 aspects regarding these possible policy measures. First, that they are still under consideration, and it's clear that not all policy measures will be taken on board, because some of them are simply contradictory. We have to balance between the working conditions and between the business interests for all policy measures, for all policy options. And also very important thing also to stress that all these policy measures don't consider any changes in the maximum driving time or a minimum time of breaks, or even minimum rest periods. They only consider flexibilities, how to distribute breaks, or for example start of the driving or the start of the daily rest period. There is only flexibility, no changing the basic rules. And what are the next steps? We intend to present the impact assessment report to the regulatory scrutiny board in November, and then there will be a meeting in December, the meeting of the scrutiny board in December. Then this means that if everything goes well, we will be able to present a proposal for a revision of regulation 561 only at the beginning of next year. Well, this is all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention.
Good afternoon, everybody. Glad to be here. So first of all, my name is Seamus Lynch. I work in a team which is responsible for the task of concerted and joint inspections, which is assigned to the pillar of enforcement. Before I just get into an overview of the activities we've been engaged in so far this year, I'd just like to make some initial words, we'll say, on our mandate and the support that we can offer to member states, national enforcement authorities in launching or participating in cross-border concerted or joint inspections. So if you just move on to the next slide for me, please. Okay, as you can see from this slide, ELA has a specific mandate in the field of social aspects of the international road transport sector. ELA supports the implementation of these rules, including the rules on driving and resting times, access to the profession of road transport operator, and posting of drivers. The mobility package recently introduced significant changes to this sector-specific legislation, which the member states are currently implementing or whose implementation they're still preparing. ELIC plays a proactive role in supporting the member states and the Commission in the cross-border enforcement of these rules, together with the social partners and the enforcement organisations. The Lex Specialis even mentions an explicit role for ELA for what concerns assistance to the member states' enforcement authorities in carrying out concerted checks and providing support for education and training efforts. So the next slide, please. So there are many issues in labour mobility across the EU. The need for concerted and joint inspections is increasing, especially in areas such as abuse of posting of workers, bogus self-employment, fraudulent letterbox companies, bogus temporary work agencies, and undeclared work. Effective cross-border joint actions can help enforcement bodies across Europe address these issues, and concerted and joint inspections are part of these actions and can be an effective deterrent by bringing together the investigative powers, expertise, and resources of multiple partners. So next slide, please. So our founding regulation sets out that ELA shall provide certain supports to member states. ELA provides member states with operational support and assistance in the preparation, coordination, and follow-up actions. For instance, ELA facilitates communication and exchange of information, organizes joint preparatory, operational, and follow-up meetings, also provides financial support in the line of interpretation, accommodation, travel expenses incurred due to cross-border actions. And we can also provide other support, such as translation of case-specific documentation or communication material. And legal expertise is also available. Next slide, please. So moving on to our activities in 2022 at the roadside. In February, we contributed to our first week of action. Was held in February 2022, where together with in cooperation with RoadPol, we organised and facilitated cross-border inspections, which included the involvement of other national authorities within the member states who in addition to the police also had the competence for the enforcement of the rules which come under the remit of ELA. So basically we involved labour inspectorates, transport inspectorates, customs, social security, etc. And in this week here in February, we coordinated and supported the participation of observers from Cyprus, Greece, Italy, Lithuania, Malta, Spain, and Slovakia. And the authorities from Belgium, Germany, Croatia, and Portugal facilitated the observers from all of these countries. So you can move on then to the next slide, please. Yeah, so our second week of action in cooperation with RoadPol took place in June 2022. And here we had an increased participation of member states, which I will show on the next slide. But in terms of the figures relating to statistics from the whole week, we can see again the broad participation of national authorities. There were more than 226 control officers involved in that particular week, including 69 individual observers from 34 authorities. And obviously we also had ELA staff and several interpreters were also present as well. So moving on to the next slide. Here, where we show a comparison of the figures between February and June. As you can see, the February figures are in purple and the June figures are in blue. In February, we had, as I said earlier, we had 4 member states who hosted observers from 7 other member states. So in total, there were 11 participants in that particular week of action. In the June week of action, the participants increased from 11 to 17. There were 8 roadside checks in total, 2 of which were in one member state, France, as you can see there on the right-hand side. And 4 of the hosting countries also attended as observers in other member states. So all in all, between hosts and observers in June, the total participants was 17. So the next slide, please. Yeah, so here, yeah, we're having our final week of action. It's actually next week. It's organized for a week commencing the 10th of October. And there you can see that we will have countries hosting observers. The countries who will be hosting observers will be Belgium, Bulgaria, Denmark, Finland, France, Romania, and Slovakia. And then the participating authorities who will be traveling as observers will be, as you can see, some of them include also the member states who are also hosting. So I think of the 7 hosting member states, we'll have 5 who are also traveling as observers. So in all, a total of 15 participating member states. Also, October is quite a busy month. We supported a roadside check yesterday in Belgium, where we had observers from Lithuania and Estonia. And I think in Croatia on the 25th to 26th of October, we'll also have observers there from Latvia, Slovakia, Belgium, and Slovenia. We hope to meet with Roadpol again in November, where we hope to finalize our arrangements for next year and basically decide on the specific weeks of action in 2023. So next slide, please. So we're not only engaged in these particular weeks of action, which I've outlined in the last few slides, but we also, and this is just a sample of some other activities which we've been engaged in throughout the year. You see there, where the end of March, beginning of April, we had a joint inspection. This is a premises inspection between the Netherlands and Bulgaria. In June, we had another targeted company inspection where Belgium and Bulgaria were involved, and there was another separate roadside inspection outside of the week of action in June, which happened in Zeebrugge on the 6th of June. The joint inspection between the Netherlands and Bulgaria was, the purpose of that was to investigate a suspected letterbox company. And with the use of our national liaison officers, this was brought to a successful conclusion. The actual targeted company inspection, which involved Belgium and Bulgaria. This was quite a high profile case. Many of you may have seen it in the media, but just to give you a brief overview of it, it was a file that was already started back in 2017, almost five years ago. The Federal Judicial Police, led by the Belgian investigating judge, had tried several times, I believe, to obtain information in connection with a group in Bulgaria. International search notices were sent, letters of rogatory were prepared, but each time without concrete and satisfactory results. And even Eurojust were involved, but it was never able to come to a successful conclusion. But thankfully, in the middle of the year, with the intervention of our Belgian and Bulgarian national liaison officers, it actually became possible to carry out a joint inspection in Bulgaria. And thanks to this joint inspection, the Belgian authorities can now continue this file, and in the light of the findings made and the information obtained, take the necessary steps to guarantee the rights of the drivers concerned. And then finally, with this roadside inspection, which took place on the 6th of June in Zeebrugge, we facilitated the participation as observers Bulgaria at this particular roadside check. But just to let you know that the focus of this particular check, which the inspectors put a lot of focus on, was two of the new rules which were introduced by the mobility package. The one that forbids drivers to take their regular weekly rest in the cabin, and the one which obliges vehicles to return to their member state of establishment at least within 8 weeks after leaving it. Now, there was just, I suppose, two striking figures which came out of that roadside check. The first one was that of the 153 vehicles which were checked on the day, they detected 101 violations of that weekly rest rule. So there was basically 2/3, 66% of the drivers were found to be taking their regular weekly rest in the cabin. And in addition to that, there were 32 cases detected where the vehicles failed to return to their member state of establishment, excuse me, at least after 8 weeks after leaving it. So it does show, I suppose, that mobility package is here, but we know we continue to have problems in relation to them couple of issues. So next slide, please. Okay, so yeah, before I finish, I'd just like, obviously, given that this is a workshop on passenger transport, I'll have to acknowledge that I didn't have much details on passenger checks. So it's probably true to say that it would appear that there's less focus on the enforcement of passenger transport as opposed to the freight. But in view of this, so far we've already engaged in talks with Sven in Roadpol to see how maybe we can address this issue going forward. So we hope to set up something with Sven in the near future. More than likely it'll be early next year. But Sven's actually here today. I think I can't see the screen at the moment. Ivana and Sven might be prepared to say a few words in relation to how maybe we can address this issue going forward. And before he does, I would just like to maybe just encourage any of the rest of you who are here, if you have any views or there's any good practices maybe you'd like to share of how you deal with the enforcement of the passenger transport in your own countries, please feel free to speak.
First of all, thank you for giving me the floor and the good feedback given by Seamus about this year's week of actions. My name is Sven Kilian. I'm German police officer and working for Roadpol. Just saying a few words. What is Roadpol? We are, let's say, the European road policing network. We are the traffic police, and our main thing is to reduce fatal and serious accidents on the road all over Europe. And our members are nearly all European member states, not only European Union, but as well other countries from Europe. And what we are doing is sharing best practices, arranging joint conferences, all over the traffic issues in general. And we have different working groups on that. And one working group is about, let's say, trucks and buses, mainly driving resting times, tachographs, manipulations. But since mobility package, we are involved as well in other things based on mobility package, and giving some comments or sentences to Eva, because she said she thinks that she gave a lot of support for us, and indeed she did, or the European Commission did. We were involved since the beginning of mobility package, or even though before. Let's say in expert groups for the new tachograph, what will come next year. We were involved in that expert group. We always got asked for the Q&As, not only on posting, as well on driving resting times, and also on. So we were very thankful about that. Of course, we cannot speak in behalf of member states. That's not allowed for us, but we are asked as individual experts, and we are always when we can give or can share our experience on that to find the best solutions. We are running out various action weeks during the year, not only on truck and bus weeks, as well on alcohol controls, seat belts, and all those things. And in the beginning of this year, it was Seamus or Ella, we talked about how can we cooperate during the specific truck and bus weeks, and you have seen all the results, and I think it was very successful for that year, for the first year, because even though Seamus and me, we know each other for 10 years now, I guess, but he's working now for Ella. For him, it was a new organization, and we have to figure out how, for the best practice, how to work together for this year and for the future. And yeah, we focused for the action weeks this year with Ella on the transport of goods and not on passenger transports. But as Seamus already said, we want to bring our focus now for next year as well on passenger transports. And saying or giving a comment what Guy was saying, we know each other as well. It's not always easy to say, I leave the police station and stop a bus outside while he's driving, because you never know what you will stop. It's not an excuse for all the colleagues, but just saying it's a difference stopping a truck or stop a bus. When you stop a truck, you have just the driver, let's say, as a person, as a living person. When you stop a bus, you have 50 people outside on the road, and you never know who will get out of the bus. Do you have, let's say, occasional services, let's say people who are 80 years old and go for visiting some night or doing a sightseeing tour? Or do you stop, for instance, a bus full of football fans drunk and going to a football match? So you are always a bit surprised when you stop a bus, and you have to deal with that. So it's not very easy always just saying I stop a bus, because you have to deal afterwards when the bus is not allowed to keep on driving. Let's say when you have problems with driving resting times, technical things, or all those things. So you need to be prepared when you stop a bus. For instance, we in my federal state in Germany, we have special units for checking trucks and buses, just doing that. And we do a lot of checks on passenger transports for sure. And we have at our police school special trains for checking those passenger transports. And it takes 1 week, and that's only on specific things on passenger transports. We have as well then 1 week for driving resting times, 1 week for tachograph, 1 week for manipulation, 1 week for analyzing software. So it's not just 3 days going to the police school and you are very well trained. So it takes a while to be a good or an expert when you want to check passenger transports. And we need the time to send the colleagues to the police school for sure. We had the COVID situation, or we had, as mobility package came, we had the COVID situations. We were not able to carry out trainings and all those things. So I think in future it will be better, and we will have more well-trained police officers outside on the road. I just can speak now for us, for the German enforcers on the road. And we will motivate them to stop more passenger transports outside, and that is why we Seamus and me, or Ella and we talked about to have more passenger checks during the action weeks next year. That is a quick comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much again to everyone who organized this this discussion, to the Commission, but also to my own colleagues Ivona and Menzo in the back office, and to the contractors that have supported the online and the interpretation of this meeting. Just one concluding remark on the fact that we will have further training sessions, not necessarily on passenger transport, but still in the road transport area. On the 14th of November, weekly rest outside the cabin, return of the truck, reclassification of infringements. So again, you will be informed about this online sessions, and another episode of the IMI Prove program on the mutual learning will be done to explore the functionality of the IMI modules for road transport, to what extent they are working, if you have any particular difficulty in using it, etc. So that's a very important part of what is coming next, in order to fill the picture that we have partly open today. One last thing is about a deliverable of ELA, which is going to be an analytical report we are preparing on the cooperation challenges in the road transport sector. This is meant to identify the main challenges that the competent national authorities are encountering in applying these rules on a cross-border basis. And this report will be the basis for future actions of ELA in this field. So we will, of course, let you know as soon as we have the results of the study. This being said, I would like to thank you very much for attending this meeting. This is going to be one of the first initiatives also in the field of passenger transport. We saw the need of a number for further trainings or information workshops when times are more mature. So in cooperation with the Commission, we stand ready to organize new happenings such as this in the future. Thank you very much, and I would conclude this meeting. Have a nice lunch. Thank you everyone who has organized and participated. See you soon. Bye-bye.